Hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of the ASAP Pathway Podcast. I'm your host today, Dr. Stacy, and I have return guests. I'm so excited. We've got doctors Melissa Swanson and Katie Bullwinkel back with us. This is like our part two, kind of a follow up. I just had so much fun with them. I wanted to bring them back because what they're doing is pretty darn amazing in their community. And I really feel like if we can just have more organic discussions about what's happening, what's new, how other dentists, orthodontists, dental teams can get plugged in, I just think we're going to help more people. Um, if you want to know their introduction, their bio, you can reference episode 28 because I just want to kind of dive in with them today. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Hey, Stacy.
What's new? You guys have Airway Aware Charleston. What's going on there? This is your awesome community that you guys built with your colleagues and orthodontists, surgeons, ENTs. Fill us
Yeah,
in.
we are pretty busy in our individual practices, but we get to meet with each other about every other month. But we're getting pretty focused, which is really cool. We're coming up on year. We've been a group for 2 years now, so um, luckily we've kind of gelled a little bit more, come together. Everybody's getting more on the same page as far as what we're looking at together and how we're treatment planning patients. So it's nice when we get together. We just really talk about the cases that we are working on together, which helps us learn each other, learn how we're looking at things, and so it's great. We're growing too, so which is nice. But we still want to keep, for the quality of the group and focus of the group, we still want to keep it small. But we are having more interest. A lot of people kind of want to be in the group, and we're thinking about some educational opportunities as well. So,
Well, and just so others that maybe haven't listened to episode 28, just, you've been active 2 years with Airway Aware Charleston, but you were in another part of the country and you had a whole community and collaboration group there. So
mhm.
then you moved and you rebuilt from
Um,
scratch.
I did. So that really was what spurred me on, Stacy, was having that group set up, and I was so involved out there. But then I had one key member move actually from Stanford to Charleston. So he became the head of our head and neck and sleep um, program at the university. So he is the head of that program. And so that key member came, I came, and we were put together by Action Orthodontist, Christine Hong out of San Francisco. So we had a mutual friend, and we got to meet because of Dr. Gunson and Dr. Bacow. So that was kind of what spurred me to try to find then the specialists in our area to start working together. And he really had a passion and desire to have good team here too. So that was great. That was about 3 years ago, and then we started the group a year later. So
Yeah, that's amazing. And it just goes to show, I mean, you can do it. You can do it again. If you did it once, now you've done it twice. This is able to be replicated. You could, people can
absolutely.
do this listening. And you guys were so kind last time saying, if people wanted to reach out and had any questions, other, healthcare professionals like, hey, how do I do what you guys did? That they could reach out. I'll put your contact information again in the link.
Absolutely.
Um, but you know, what are you guys, when's your next meeting?
No, but
Next
actually
week.
next week.
Next
Yeah.
week.
It's next week.
Yes.
Okay. So
Mhm.
what are you going to talk about? What's new?
We have 5 cases to review that we're working on.
Mhm.
At least every case has at least 3 members working on. Maybe even one of the cases is 4, which is really nice. So it's really, next week is case review. And then one of our ENTs has an integrative medicine. Um, it's a different company, but she has a program for learning more about sinuses, and has invited all of us, to learn from her. She's really helpful with our patients as well. So
Oh, that
we're
is
a little
awesome.
bit about
That
that.
was so cool. She's
It's
so
wonderful.
interesting coming at reducing inflammation and hypertrophy through, you know, a variety of different things. Diet,
Oh my gosh, this is
like
so
so
timely.
cool. I mean, she's
Well,
really she's
It's
really neat.
wonderful.
I just put out a podcast with Surusagi. It just launched yesterday, episode 32. Um, and it is literally on discussing, hypertrophy and diet and gut health. And that's just not talked about enough. So the fact that you have somebody local, because
Yes.
I said to him, like, it's not easy for people to find, an ENT to work with that might even think along those lines. And he agreed with me.
We're
So
glad we have one.
I know,
We're
she's
very
pretty
glad.
special.
Yeah, for sure. But that group is great. That we were recently invited to go. Katie and I were invited to go to it was called the Legacy Study Club in San Antonio, and that was a group of about 50 people, all from different specialties. It was interdisciplinary care groups. Um, and people came with different parts of their team, which was really nice. And we sat at round tables the whole time. So it was surgeons, orthodontists, prosthodontists, periodontists, and restorative dentist. And it was pretty much a meeting of the minds, but also everybody in that room were members of interdisciplinary groups like Airway Aware, Charleston. They had their teams, and we all talked about what we discuss and how we kind of organize in our communities, which was really nice. And we rivaled. We said, everybody was talking about, everybody just loved their team so much, and they're so thankful for them. And it was funny because Dr. Jeff Rouse, he was like, Melissa, we're very proud of you starting your team. And I was like, yep, we're really proud of ourselves. So it was really, really great because there's been some teams there that have been working for a decade, together. So,
that's
or
amazing.
more, or more. And so it's nice, even though we're new, I feel like we kind of got off the ground pretty quick with strong members. And that's something I think, Stacey, you mentioned. I'd love to help other people find those people. That's kind of a passion of mine because I want them to feel supported in what they know and what they learn. So,
And I think that what you just said is so important. Excuse me. If people don't feel supported, they don't feel confident. I mean, and let's get really serious here. Like, when we first got started, none of us were really 100% confident. Sometimes you have to kind of fake it till you make it a little bit with that confidence. You have to start somewhere. Um, but if you feel supported and you have a community and you have other people to go to, then you can do it. Great things can happen. Great things can flow from that. So Jeff Rouse, let's give him some props. He's
absolutely.
amazing
Yes.
with what he has done with Airway, putting it on the map, having the discussions happen. Um,
And
just
so humble.
yes,
I feel like he's like kind of, the godfather of airway and dentistry. And
and
he's up
dentistry,
there
yeah.
like, okay, let's solve the problem. How do we make this? Because that's really what it was, is we were trying to solve the problem of where does the maxillary incisor go? What do we do with the maxilla? Forget everything else. What do you do with it? And he was like, I gathered you all together so you could help me figure it out. It just was it was the first time I'd met him in person. And I was blown away at just his kindness and humility. It was just great.
Which is such a key point, Katie. Some of the best mentors I've ever had, they're the most humble, they're the most open to continue to learn. That's what makes them amazing is he's a learner. He's a lifelong learner and he's bringing together, leaders aren't necessarily the ones doing everything. What a good leader does is they find good people that are doing it and bring them together, and that's what Jeff does, and that's what, I'm so proud of both of you. I mean, I'm just proud of so many ASAP members. You guys are just connecting people. And I think that's such a beautiful legacy. I think it's such a amazing way to help more people is just to connect the right people. It's not that you have to do everything. It's that you find, and I think that's a mistake. I think sometimes people think if I get in on this airway journey, I have to learn it all, right?
Right.
Well, yeah.
Yes, they do.
And they get overwhelmed. I don't want to learn tie release. I don't want to learn myofunctional therapy. Maybe I don't want to do interceptive orthodontics. I don't know that I want to do the prosthodontics after the orthodontics. There's so many facets, and you don't have to because
Right.
somebody else out there already has.
Well, and to that point, I mean, I'm that person that I'll tell Melissa, I'm like, I feel like I have to read every article. I need to go to every CE course. You know, that's who I am. But it was so reassuring. I think that's the word, reassuring to be at that meeting. I mean, one, I felt like, oh my gosh, how'd they even get my name to come to this meeting, you know? But to be there with, you know, these giants, Audrey Yoon was there, Mariana
Oh.
Evans, Tito Norris, you know, my new friend Shira, like just so many amazing, I'm leaving so many people out, and they're having a lot of the same questions that I'm having. You know, when we were like all the orthos went into a room talking, I found that just amazing, just talking it through. I mean,
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, we appreciated that setup, Stacy. Go ahead, tell me.
Well, you're at a table talking with
Mhm.
other orthodontists that are airway aware or airway minded. They include airway health comprehensively into their treatment plan. Um, what what were some of the questions you guys were wanting answers to? And did you walk away with any aha, like, oh my gosh, moments?
Oh my gosh, so many. But my big thing is what is our endpoint for the maxilla? Where do we need to go? Because in training, you know, classical training, it's all occlusion based,
Yeah.
different from what we're doing. So how much expand? You can't expand forever. Like, where are you going? You know, and you know, my training was you go for the buccal cusp of the upper to the lingual cusp of the bottom. Well, what if the lingual cusp is in the right, you know, the buccal cusps aren't in the right spot, right? And so using different metrics for that. And so, you know, I've been playing around with doing, you know, transverse cuts on the CPCT and measuring out, you know, the J point to the wall ridge and looking at it that way. And Mariana was showing cases where you need to go more than 5 millimeters maxillary expansion. Anyways, I'm getting into details, but that to me was just so nice to have these really detailed discussion and people that are looking at this, but have the same training as you of like, okay, where are we going? You know, and you know, sometimes you do it and you're like, oh, I probably should have done more, you know, or man, woo, that was a lot, you know, so
It's
so
just
just
like,
really trying to
woo!
be specific
Trying to find-
about where you're
Yeah.
going. I thought that was really helpful. You know, making sure you don't miss the people that aren't your classic expansion cases, and really trying to get out of them what their symptoms are, why are they in your office, was just so helpful. How do you do, you know, this is something, you know, in most orthodontic practices, I talked about this a little bit last episode, but most orthodontic practices are pretty busy. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you've got a whole clinic and you're, you know, it's just, it's a little bit different of a cadence than I
It
think most.
is. The flow is very different in an
Very
orthodontic
different. So
office.
then
Yeah.
how do you integrate a detailed airway exam into that? How can you be super detailed about it and not miss anything? And so we kind of talked through some of that stuff too. So it was just, to me, so wonderful to be with like-minded orthodontists and gain different insight from them on what they were doing in their practice, and then surprisingly add some stuff to them too. So it was really nice.
That is what I think is so great about that too is, you know, we say this a lot in ASAP, props to Trace. Um, what is your diagnosis? You know, what are you treating? Because that makes a big difference in what your treatment plan is going to be versus somebody else that's approaching it because they're wanting to address B, you're wanting to address A. You might have two different treatment plans, and it doesn't make somebody wrong and somebody right. It's just I'm addressing this and you were addressing that. So that's why our treatment plans look differently. But even what the heck, where's your endpoint? And I think that's especially in dentistry, um, you know, as a primary care general dentist, when I'm doing, you know, veneers, crown and bridge, restorative, pros, there's an endpoint and they walk out the door. It's different when we're looking more comprehensively, working with teams collaboratively. How are you breathing through the nose? How's your function? When are we done with that? When is it
Mhm.
finished? Orthodontically, when are you finished? You
Mhm.
know, those are excellent, excellent things to discuss and really get a better grasp on. Melissa, you were going to say something when I wanted to kind of dive into what she learned. Everybody went to their different tables. I don't know if you're going to remember what you were going to say because I
Oh,
kind of,
yes. I really loved the way that Dr. Rouse had planned for us to have discussion. It was more like sitting in a room and we were around each other. It wasn't like we were being talked to or anything. We literally sat at round tables to just listen to each other and discuss. And so there was no right and wrong. There was discussion of classical literature, and also new research and what clinically we're doing in our practices. And so it was all brought to the table just to have discussion. And it was just such a different way to meet because, we all go to a bunch of education and we even go to mentor or teach, and it's always the format is always to just present information to each other, but to actually just have discussion for 2 days straight with other people was invaluable. So I appreciate the way that was set up. But the breakouts was what I was going to say was really interesting. I think, the time was spent really well. Like Katie said, she was just for a portion of the 2 days, the orthodontists were together, the prosthodontists and restorative dentists were together. And so, of course, we're looking at different things, but we discussed the literature and where we come from when we're treatment planning. But that setup was so interesting because we all could talk about whatever we wanted to. It was discussion, and it wasn't just being taught something. So
right, right.
it was good.
You felt, well, it was an invitation to talk,
It
an
was super
invitation.
specific too.
It
It
was
was
very
only about the
maxilla.
maxilla. Forget
I
everything.
think
It
that's
was
so
kind of like
interesting.
weird, but it was,
Yeah.
Like, you
it was
so badly wanna say, "But that mandible, and what are we gonna
right,
do with
right,
the
right, right.
mandible?" And it's
Where
like,
do you
"No."
want it? And then we'll talk about, I guess we talk about the mandible next time. I
It's
don't
like,
know.
"The
We do.
mandible shall not be spoken of at
Right.
all. No
Gunson was
mandible."
like dying. He was like, ah. It
That
was
is
good.
that is so I love it. Where does the maxilla go? Because if you can't figure out where one arch goes, then what the heck are you gonna do with that second arch? So it really does make sense to, like, let's focus on one arch.
One
Where
thing.
should that go? And
Mhm.
then we can maybe later figure out how to get that mandible up underneath it and where it could be, stabilized long term. So something you guys said earlier, I said, "Hey, what's going on with Airway Aware? Charleston, you guys have case reviews." So I guess, sometimes you guys do case reviews, like we do that in ASAP. Sometimes we'll have
Yeah.
um, a key opinion leader come in and talk, and you guys might do that locally too, I guess. And then sometimes you just talk cases. How impactful. I mean, talk about continuity of care. Gosh, I wish I could do that with every single patient I had. Just sit with a bunch of um, other leaders and experts and say, what am I missing with this case? How can I best treat this patient? So you guys have like 5 cases. You'll put up something like put up a PowerPoint on the patient, and then you just all talk about the case, and everybody has an opportunity to discuss what they think within their field that should be done.
Right, we basically bring the records, whether, and whatever, well, I might take certain records and Katie might take records, and then the ENT, obviously, they have their examination notes and anything else that they bring with them. But we bring everything that we have collected from the patient, and then, talk about what we're doing, whether all the patients, for example, for next week are kind of in different stages of their treatment, but we talk to each other about, okay, what's next and what's the best for this person. And we learn so much from, okay, we saw this on this patient, so we start to look out for it on other patients, which is really nice.
Mhm.
Exactly. I was going to say you start, and this is something like Michael Gunson and Rebecca Bacow were talking about on their podcast with us was patterns.
Yes.
Right.
Is identifying patterns and the hiccups in growth and development, how important that is. My gosh, guys, if we could get more um, dentists, orthodontists, other dental specialties recognizing patterns and referring appropriately, that alone is a game changer for somebody's trajectory of health. Um, just even figuring out the phenotypes and the patterns. And I mean, that's stuff that we're doing right now. I mean, that's still being figured out. Like you said, that's what legacy was, is looking at these patterns and talking about it. And how we're going to resolve things and what are our endpoints. When you broke out in your session, Melissa, what were you guys discussing? I mean, obviously you got the orthodontics talking about their endpoint. For the general dentist, I think the endpoint might be, it's kind of a little bit more vague.
We talked a lot about the central incisor, like Katie said, that was supposed to be the focus. Everybody kind of brought up more general ideas about the maxilla, but central incisor, really lip mobility, a lot of things with the lip closure, in
Angulation.
yeah, well, talking about where that incisor is, how that affects what the muscles, we talked about muscles, we talked about lips, we talked about everything that impacts
Speech,
where
yeah,
that incisor
phonetics.
is. Exactly, speech, tongue, all the things. So it's interesting because yes, we were the prosthodontist and restorative dentist, but we bring up orthodontics constantly. We bring up, muscles and lips, and we also had a lot of discussion about plastic surgery literature as well, and looking at
Interesting.
that and planning on where not only the maxilla but the incisor sits for lip, the upper lip, and where that sits in the face, and not only the aesthetics of it, but what the functional harmony is too, with whatever we do and how that affects that. So, yeah.
That's awesome that you guys brought in some cosmetic literature, because I mean,
Mhm.
really, that is the thing too. People don't fully appreciate, I think, about dentistry is, yes, we are physicians. We are whatever, oral physicians. We are definitely, we have our medical side to us. We're dealing with healthcare, but there's such an artistic side to dentistry. You're doing both, which is what I love. Like, I love sleep medicine. I love doing dental sleep. And people will say to me, "Oh, are you going to start just do sleep only?" And some people do that. And thank God there are people that are just focusing just on that. I love to do that within my dental practice because I love the artistic side
I do
of
too.
dentistry.
Yeah.
I love that expression and the creativity, and
Mhm.
just even changing someone's face. Like, just even last week, I was explaining to an edentulous patient, that's somebody that has no teeth whatsoever, um, that, if we can figure out the vertical, where to put those upper dentures and lower dentures together in a place where she can speak well and function well, but also, good grief, it gave her a lower half of her facelift. I mean, she looked in the mirror and she was like, this is unbelievable. And even just her profile, but even Airway, now that you have this vertical, you have a different box now where this tongue can live. We're giving you more room in the box. And, she's even like, oh my gosh, I'm sleeping better. I always tell my patients to sleep with their dentures in. I want you to take a break with your dentures during the day, let the tissues breathe. But I want you to sleep with those dentures in, because all of the research is showing us that a patient's airway is better and more optimal when there's better vertical, better architecture, things aren't collapsing. So patients are even like sleeping better, just having that, the better dimensions and all of it, it goes together. There's a reason you look a certain way and it's
That's right.
attractive, but
Exactly.
it's also functional to look
That's,
that way.
Well, you just
that's right.
hit one of the main points that we came out of that meeting is what looks good
Myself.
is what functions well. So,
Amen. Yes.
and that's what, concept in dental school, even, it's just form follows function.
Form follows function. And yeah, And I mean, that is even a discussion, and maybe this came out of the legacy meeting, and maybe it's in my head, probably because I was talking to Rebecca Bachau and Michael Gunson about this on a podcast. But when something looks attractive, it isn't just vanity. It's because it was designed to be that way. We find it attractive. It's the ideal, but it's the most functional that the person's supposed to be as well.
I
I
mean, the facial changes in a MARPE patient,
was
I
just-
mean, they
I
look
was just gonna say that.
so much younger
Yeah,
after, I mean, in an adult.
they're healthier.
They look so much
And-
healthier and just, they look, I mean.
But what are the changes?
and
Let's talk MARPE for a second. Like, for, explain MARPE to someone listening that is a layperson. They're not in dentistry, or they're even a dentist and they don't know what MARPE is.
It is a skeletal expander. So it is taking the two halves of the maxilla and separating it out. It's taking away the dental component, the dental expansion, and actually moving the bone. So you separate out rotation points up between your eyes. Like if you take your finger and put it in between your eyebrows, that's where you're rotating from. And so when you spread, if you take your hands in a prayer and then you TP them out, you think your cheeks are on, that wrist part of your expansion point. And so you get wider cheekbones. You get a little bit of a forward rotation of the maxillary complex as well. So you get, I mean, it's slight, right? But I have a lot of patients that will say, I feel like I just got cheek filler. And
That's it. I'm getting MARPE tomorrow.
right? I know. It looks good. I mean, you get better lip support.
for sure.
I mean, none of my patients know who Julia Roberts is anymore, but
I know.
my young ones, I know. I made a comment about Dakota Fanning the other day. They didn't know who she was. I was like, I'm dying.
Yes.
And I'll go through a whole rabbit hole after this about middle school slang that I went into yesterday. Oh my gosh. But anyways, that commissure to commissure with teeth is just gorgeous.
Beautiful.
It's
Yeah.
gorgeous. And so, yeah.
I know it's really cool when you do have a patient. I have a few patients, Stacy, that I've done MARPEs on, and I have one of the sweetest ladies, and she comes and she just says, "My husband keeps telling me how beautiful I am."
Aw.
And she's in her early 50s, and she's just so happy with how her face looks. Obviously, I'm very happy with her occlusion and her profiles and how everything is sitting, but it's just great. Like, she's so happy, and every time she tells me what her husband's telling her, so that how we are changing their life. Obviously, she's healthier, but she loves the way she looks.
Mhm.
And she had some deep crease lines here, and some of that's gone, and it's just really great what it can do for someone's face.
That is amazing. That is awesome. Yeah, I have seen so many beautiful before and afters with MARPE, and I have had, 4 bicuspids removed, and I don't have a lot of room for my tongue, so I'm always flirting around with that. And I mean, my airway is great, but there's things I notice that, I would be more forward. I know I'd have a broader smile. I know I would have more room for my tongue, and I wouldn't have a lisp. I always get picked out in, dental meetings by myofunctional therapists and oral surgeons. They'll like point to me in the, you had 4 bicuspids out, didn't you? And yes, I did. So, I
Well, there were
just think,
several providers with MARPEs in their own mouths at this legacy meeting.
Oh, yeah.
It was kind of comical.
It was.
And then every people that had it or had it or just had it the day before. I mean, people practice what they preach.
well, something I wanted to touch on, since we're kind of talking on ortho, Katie, so I'm going to direct this to you. Like, not all orthodontists do MARPE. Not all orthodontists are comfortable doing MARPE, and that's okay. But maybe touch on, not all orthodontists are even wanting to do early interceptive ortho. And there's just some, I mean, I think the orthodontic community, they're working out some things right now behind the scenes. They're all talking. There's a lot, which is wonderful. We're having conversations that have not really ever happened and that are happening more often. But there's also sometimes, among dentists that might be more airway aware, they might get a little frustrated because their local orthodontist isn't wanting to see a kiddo under 7, or they're not wanting to do several phases. I mean, let's get real. Some kids might need 2 to 3 expanders.
Oh, yeah.
And that is not uncommon with the growth hiccups we're seeing, with mouth breathing and poor tongue function and things like that. They're just not having the drive of growth. What would you say to the general dentist or other dental specialties that are looking for an orthodontist in their community, and they're maybe a little frustrated coming up against a wall with the orthodontist? Like, in fairness to that orthodontist, like, what would you say on their behalf?
Well, let me back up a little bit. So, orthodontists, we all want to treat evidence-based. And there is orthodontic literature that says interceptive treatment is ineffective. But when you go back and you look at what that research says, the most, famous one that we always talk about is the Chapel Hill study that was done in the early 2000s that looked at class 2 treatment that was done in 2 phases versus 1 phase during puberty. And the conclusion of that study, and this is the one that a lot of orthodontists will quote, was that the occlusion was the same whether you broke it up in 2 phases or 1 phase. And so why ever do it in 2 phases? Because it'll be more efficient, less time in treatment to do it in the 1 phase. But the key to that is the occlusion. And if the goal is not occlusion, then
Correct.
and it's airway and it's breathing, because you look at Guilleminot's paper about sleep disorder breathing and OSA and how that affects the face and growth and cognitive development in all these years that this child is functioning with a small mandible. Who cares about the occlusion? That's not the goal. The goal is different. And so being kind to your orthodontist and making sure that they understand the assignment that's being asked. Is the assignment occlusion?
Well
And
said.
that is totally different. So if a class 2 patient comes into my office and I'm very airway aware, and the patient's telling me there's, no breathing issues, they're sleeping just fine, there's not a ton of, tooth wear, I'm not seeing in between the lines that there's any issue there, I'm going to wait until they hit a pubertal growth spurt. And then we're going to put, do our functional appliances and all of that to correct the class 2. But if a patient's coming in, I mean, I had a 6-year-old the other day that came in, full step class 2, she's not even in permanent dentition. The goal is not occlusion. So she's wearing, essentially the same thing we put in an adult. She's wearing like a snoring appliance, which by the way, is just a functional class 2 appliance. I put her in a twin block. She only wears it at night. The goal is not occlusion. The
The
goal
goal
is to do this,
is
and her
airway
symptoms
patency. Yeah.
are gone. She's doing so much better in school. I mean,
Yes.
but there's a difference there, right? I mean, an orthodontist
Right.
might look at me and be like, what are you doing? She's going to
Right.
do this thing for 100 years. But again, I mean, it's the same as an adult wearing a sleep appliance. It's not the same thing. So understanding where people are coming from. I had a patient that came in the other day. She had been treated as an adolescent. Occlusion, beautiful. Aesthetics, beautiful. But she can't breathe.
Mm.
And she was like, well, why didn't my orthodontist look at this? We did the CBCT and looked, and she was pretty maxillary deficient. And I said, he understood the assignment. You came in and you asked for a beautiful functional smile. It is beautiful. You've got class 1 occlusion. It looks great. It's held the last 10 years. It's beautiful. You're asking me a different question.
I
You're
love
asking me,
that.
how
What's
can I
the
breathe? Can I nose
assignment?
better? What
Yes.
is the assignment? And
Yeah.
so when you're talking to your orthodontist, making sure you're saying, like, I'm not expecting you to fix this class 2 long-term right now. I just want to help this child, breathe better at night. That's what you're asking. So those kind of conversations, right? That's understanding where the orthodontist is coming from. Not to get too rambly, but and then helping them understand what you're trying to help this kid, because the kid better than the orthodontist will. They've been in their
Absolutely.
office for they just met him, and so them better. Giving them, I have so many people, I have speech therapists and my functional therapist that will call me ahead of time and say, hey, this patient's coming to see you. This is what I'm seeing, and I'm ahead of the game. Then I get a head start, and that's better for the patient.
This
For
is
me to say,
great.
because sometimes they come in and mom forgets everything they told you.
Okay, this
They have
happened to me
something
this
totally
week.
different to me, and they're like, they didn't tell you this, and I'm like, no.
No. So
So
I had an
tell them,
orthodontist reach out
be
to me.
on the orthodontist team, I guess is
Yes.
what I'm trying to say.
I had this happen twice this week. And I'm like, extremely detailed with my referral forms. I mean, I even used to, maybe I go back to doing this again, but I was inundating the other office, so I stopped. But every time I would refer, I would send I give the referral to the patient and a copy to the person I'm referring to. So they had it, because what's happening, I have all these awesome concerns that I write down. So we're communicating. Patient doesn't bring it to the consult.
Nope, never. I mean,
They
like,
never bring it. So then
never.
I'm like, what was the
Never.
point of my
Either
beautiful
email it
referral?
to them or just assume it got lost in the pocketbook. Never
So
do.
the orthodontist texts me on the side, "Hey, this is your," and I'm like, I feel like a ding dong. Like, um, he texts me and he's like, "Stacy, I had them fill out because I gave him a PSQ. I go, this is the PSQ. It's the Shervin PSQ. It's a validated pediatric sleep questionnaire form. It's amazing. Just use it on all your patients." He's like, done. So he fills it out. And then the patient just showed up for ortho. He he sees all these yes, 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 yeses. He texts me a picture of it. He goes, "This is your patient." Like, I think he was kind of like, "How did you miss this, Stacy? They need to get to an ENT. They need to get to a," and I said, "I know. I put on the referral all the issues." And he goes, "Well, they didn't bring that in." I mean, so we're just like, and then I had a periodontist say, "Why is this person?" He texts me, "Hey, I got so and so in the chair. What's going on?" I'm like, "I sent you an entire," he goes, "He didn't bring it."
They,
So
they never do.
they never
Assume
do. So
when you send
how do
it
we
in,
do this then?
you
How do
email it
we
to them.
do this?
You email it to them.
I talk to you directly. really.
I like my people text me because they know I won't read an email, but
Right.
they I laugh. I mean, I do. But my people email it to my front desk. My front desk prints it out for me, so I have it at least, a week or a day before, so I can read it and kind of do a little bit of pre-work. But and I really appreciate it when the provider will call me or text me and say, "Hey, this person's coming in. I've sent you a detailed report. Will you make sure to look at it?" And then I can do a little bit of homework. I mean, Melissa goes as far as to send me imaging so I can really be efficient with my time with them. And the patient appreciates it. I mean, it
Yeah.
makes you look so good in front of the
Yeah.
patient because they're like, "Oh, wow, I have a team of people that's taking care of me."
Yes,
And
that
that's what we really
communication
want.
feels so good because
It feels
patients aren't
so good.
used to that. Yeah.
No.
Well, I
And
used to
that's the
do
best part
that.
about the team.
I used to do that. I used to like fact, and I even used to have, and I actually got this idea from a sleep physician. He said, "Do me a favor. When you refer a patient to me, will you fax it to my lead sleep person? Because then not only are you referring to me, we're going to reach out to the patient and try to make an appointment.
Mhm.
Dr. Dr. Stacy referred you for XYZ, and we would love to get you in the office." So now they have two healthcare professionals concerned about the same issues. And they're like, "Oh, I guess I should go in because they're concerned and now they're calling me concerned." Um, and I kind of stopped doing it because I thought I was inundating, but it's probably a good idea to just maybe just go ahead and email anyway. And so when you refer to Melissa, when you refer to Katie, do you guys reach out if you receive that referral? Do you reach out to the
We do.
patient to
We do.
schedule, or do you wait for the patient to call?
No, we reach out and schedule.
Yeah, I think that's the
Unless, I mean,
key.
sometimes I've had a couple of people where there's something, they'll say, "Don't reach out and call," and then we won't, but no, we always reach out and call and try to be efficient about getting them in. And then, I do the same thing when I sent a couple of patients to the ENT that we were speaking about. And, I go ahead and send the CBCT to her so that she
Yeah.
can see the adenoids and she doesn't have to scope the kids because usually kids. So she has all that, and then I'll put the concerns. I send them to you first instead of GI, but this is what I'm concerned about. Make sure they talk about this with you. Like, she gets a whole sheet from me too. And it's somewhat informal. I mean, it doesn't need to be a big thing. It's just, "Hey, this is what my concern is. I've also sent them these places. Let's try to figure it out." I mean, the number of times when I'm talking to patients and say, "These are my tools. This is what I can help with. But if this isn't your issue, it's not going to be effective." Or I could maybe be 10% of this issue, but you also have, allergy that we need to take care of. There's inflammation in your airway tract. It could be these things. How can we really get the whole team on board? It's not all one person, but if you don't communicate that with the team and the referral, then it's all going to get missed, or the patient's going to feel overwhelmed because they don't know where to go next. But holding their hand and saying, you're going to Melissa and she's going to do this. And then
Yeah.
she will determine when you're going to go to the next spot,
Yeah.
and then we'll all talk together. I mean, they appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
It's overwhelming.
They do.
It is overwhelming, and putting that, they're like, I'll get to it when I get to it. And I just find when you do that and you let them get to it when they get to it, they don't
Yeah.
get to it.
Stacey, we kind of started out saying that we can't know it all. We can't do it only on our own, so that's the part, and just getting these protocols and kind of how we're going to work together as a team just nailed down, we're still working on it. We're a 2-year-old group of providers, but who work with each other consistently, and we're still working on it. But our kind of focusing with our meetings and things, that taking that time to really focus on patient care
Mm.
and is really, I wish we could meet a lot more than every other month, because if we could conference together, bring all of our records, talk together instead of, which is great that we still, we text, email, all those things, but how would it be if we could sit in conference about every treatment plan that we treat together?
Wouldn't
Like
it be
amazing
so
situation.
dreamy? I know what would be so great? I always have fantasies about this, like someday that, dentistry isn't in separate brick and mortar buildings, that we are more just kind of like medicine, go to a hospital or a medical building and like everyone's together. I think it's kind of changing a little bit where you're seeing that kind of happening. Not everybody has separate brick and mortar. I have because that's how medicine sometimes is too. I have to go to the cardiologist. Now I have to go to the endocrinologist. Now I have to go. And that's what's beautiful about places like MD Anderson or the Mayo Clinic. They
Exactly.
bring everything together, and that's how people get better. It's because everybody's
But a step
communicating.
further, I would like the dentistry and the medicine to
To go
also
All
go
be together. Yes.
I feel like there's like this imaginary wall between the two, and then it can't be like that. There's no
No.
imaginary wall between the back of, the second molar and the throat. I mean, it's all
It's
one.
so true.
Oh,
Susan Maples said that, she brings that up a lot. She would like to see, we all would like to see this happen, but um, that it used to be when you were in medical school and dental school, we're talking decades and decades, maybe even 100 years ago. I don't even know when it stopped, but you crossed over. Medicine and dentistry were very collaborative. It stopped. And it's like all of a sudden, this part of the head, it's just not talked about in medical school. And they kind of leave it to us. And it's funny because I think we are more aware of what's going on medically than I think the medical colleagues are aware about what's going on with the oral connection. So it really kind of the burden is on us to kind of go to our medical colleagues and let them know what we're doing. And hey, we're doing oral DNA testing, or there's such a connection. Cardiologists know there's a connection with dentistry. Endocrinologists know there's a connection with dentistry. Um, it's just got to, like you said, Katie, I think it'll happen maybe someday. Maybe I'm just too optimistic. I just think,
No, I'm the
well, the
same
more
way,
we do
Stacey.
these teams, the more
The
it
more-
will.
that's right.
I mean, just having a physician's cell phone that you can be like, hey,
Right.
can
yeah,
and
And
sending images. I mean, I feel like sometimes sending images is the hardest part of communicating with the physician. Why? I don't know.
There's
Yeah.
so much wellness like the lay person too. They know that they're whatever's happening with them, whether they have a disease, autoimmune disease, or something, they know that they have side effects that show up in their mouth. Once they come to us, we have examinations and things. And we have patients that ask us, can you talk to our doctors about this, please? Can you try to get me in sooner? Can you call them? Can you? And my answer always is yes, yes, yes. I don't care what they think about getting a letter from a dentist, but I write it. I'm going to tell them every single thing that I saw that's connected to that disease and what, I understand that you have a panel of testing to do and all those things, but let's try to work together to get this person healthy because there's a lot of side effects I'm seeing. And so
Mhm.
I know that that's kind of sticking your neck out there, but that's something we have to do, just like you said.
But you doing that, Melissa, creates a potential collaborative line. Now that medical doctor may or may not go, who the heck is this dentist?
Right.
I need to know them. I
Oh,
need,
they do. They do.
well, it could be good and it could be not so good, but
Yeah.
they may think, but I think um, most physicians that really want to take really good care of their patients would be impressed by your reaching out instead of burdened. The ones that are burdened, you don't want to work with them anyway. The ones that are impressed with that communication, with that continuity of care, I think they're appreciative. They've got so much on their plates, guys. Like, I feel for our medical colleagues because with insurance, they are enslaved. Most are enslaved to the insurance companies. They're exhausted. The majority of what they're doing in a day is not even patient care. The majority of what they do in a day are electronic records and notes, and they're exhausted. So if we could politely and not point a finger, but walk alongside them and say, not you missed something. It's, hey, we have a mutual patient. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with you because I think what I'm seeing and what you're seeing together, I think we can really get this patient on the other side of it. I think it's going to go a really long way, Melissa. Like what you're doing is amazing. Um, Really quick, I know we got to get off here, but I have to swing back to your discussion on middle school slang, Katie. What the heck?
Oh my gosh, y'all, it's like not English. I
No,
don't,
it's
I,
not.
I told a patient he was getting his expander off. Now we're really digressing. I told a patient he was getting his expander off and he goes, bet. And I went, like, you bet I won't? Like, and he was like, no, 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 bet. And I was like, what in the world? Apparently it means great.
Bet.
Yep. And
Awesome.
Sigma is like not good.
Yeah, Sigma.
Alpha's good. Beta, real bad.
Oh my
I don't
God.
know. There's like,
I know my son said
I didn't
Sigma. He
realize it
goes
was
Sigma.
happening. And like, I speak middle schooler like that. Those are my people. I mean, I treat a lot of adults, but they're my people. So yeah,
You
I
have
didn't
to
have
learn
time
the
last
slang.
night, but tonight over a glass of wine, I will be very much, there's a middle school teacher on Instagram who apparently like goes through it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Rizzo is something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or
Do you
sus.
have middle school? My
Something's
kids are
real
little.
sus. Like, if something's sus,
You
my
know,
kids are like,
yeah,
that's
we
sus.
said that's kind of, I don't know. I don't know. It is like a whole thing. When this kid gets his, he's like a rock star kid that corrected underbite in like an amazing amount of time. But when he gets it off, my plan is to talk to him in like full middle schooler slang. So I got
Watch
to come
his
up
face.
with this sentence. He and his mom, we were just like cracking. I couldn't stop laughing for the rest of the afternoon.
It's funny because
My kids were like,
they're either
I just
super
didn't realize
impressed.
I was old. I don't know when that happened.
I don't know, but I will bring up movies. I bring up stuff all the time and I get the blank look, even on adults. And that's when I'm getting old, is when I'm bringing up stuff that I think they should get. And they look at me like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, don't you remember like the show Wonder Years? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh gosh. Do you not get the Wonder
Wonder
Years?
Years. We held up an X-ray. We had like an old film in the office, and they were like, "Oh, I was 2 years old when that was taken." I was like, "Are you?"
Yeah, it's
I like
it's
got married
happening.
that year. That's awesome.
It's
Uh,
happening. We're
we've been laughing.
aging, but I love that we're aging because with aging
The
comes some
alternative is
wisdom.
worse.
That's right. So true. Okay, I've got my final three questions, and I do want to give some props. Just people that want to learn more about Jeff Rouse, I'm going to put some information too. He's amazing,
please.
and a lot of us are standing on the shoulders of a lot of the work that he has done. And he is a huge supporter of ASAP Pathway. Thank you, Jeff. And all of us are working together, and leave our egos at the door. We're going to help more patients. And Jeff Rouse is definitely one of those humble mentors that we all need to say thank you to. Here we go. Lightning round. Each of you, what did you want to be when you were little? What did you want to grow up to be when you were little?
Oh, no.
What did you like?
2 things. I wanted to be the first lady
Ooh.
and a rocket.
Oh, girl, you are so tall. How tall are you, Melissa?
Not that tall. I'm 5'9".
That is tall. I'm 5'9". I used to be 5'10", but I'm shrinking. But you can be a rocket at 5'9", I think.
Oh, thanks. I think you have to be 5'7".
See, you're taller than the average rocket.
But you have to be the same height as the rest of them.
I think
You
I wanted
do.
to
They
be a
have
rock cat,
to-
but I didn't dance. I wanted to be an architect.
There you go.
Well, you
But
are in
There
a
wasn't enough
way.
of a, well, that's how I went into orthodontics is, I was disappointed because I had shadowed an architect and I was like, he doesn't talk. He like is on a computer, and I have friends that are architects and they talk all the time. I mean, he was like working on a staircase. I was like watching him do AutoCAD and I was like, well, this isn't going to work. And then I was talking to my orthodontist, who's one of my mentors. I mean, I was like 14 or 15. And he was like, well, if you like architecture, then you'd like orthodontics. And then he went on to the next patient. And then I was like, huh.
Who's this orthodontist? We got to give him
Oh,
props.
he's the best. His name's Dr. John Pittner, and he's retired, but he'll still come and take me to lunch every now and then.
Oh,
He said
thanks,
I was
Dr.
one of his
Pittner.
patients that actually did it.
Thank
But
you,
he's the
Dr.
best.
Pittner, for having
Dr.
Katie
Pittner
join
and
Orth.
his daughter Leslie is also an orthodontist and one of my mentors, and she helped me with my thesis in residency. But they're great people,
Yeah.
and I talk to her all the time. She has a degree in positive psychology, which is super interesting because you can't do orthodontics without people on board. So she's been a great mentor too. But
Amazing.
yeah, he regretted it, I think, a little bit because then I made him hire me after school. So I've been doing this ortho thing for a while.
That is awesome. Thanks, Dr. Pittner. Okay, if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Oh. Either see the future or fly.
Ooh,
That's kind of boring. But
no,
I
it's
would
not.
fly.
That's
I think
awesome.
I think heal.
Heal. Ooh, I love that. Who's the superhero? She does. She touches people and just heals people.
I would do that. I just
Ah, that makes sense.
if I
I
could.
like it.
Yeah.
I used to think when I was little, like, ooh, I'd love to be invisible, but now I wouldn't want that superpower. But I thought it would be kind of fun because
It would get me into trouble.
I would get me into trouble. So see, I don't want to do that. But I think flying would be fun, but healing, I think that's amazing. Okay. If you had to pick, this is the only food you're going to have the rest of your life, what would it be? You can
Oh.
only eat one food. That's it.
Cheese grits.
What?
Cheese grits.
Cheese grits.
I could live off of cheese grits and wine and coffee.
Well, you only get one thing, sister. So you're eating cheese grits.
I feel
Okay.
like you'll say cheese grits. That's
Okay.
Mine's a loaded baked potato.
We like carbs and cheese.
A loaded baked potato, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
I
Yeah.
could live on baked potatoes. Yeah.
I didn't say this.
I love it. Well, now I'm hungry. So I'm going to go eat. Thank you guys. I appreciate you so much.
Thanks.
This was
Thank you.
great. This was great. Guys, thanks for watching. If you think this would benefit someone that you know, please like, share, subscribe. And we have a free gift and a free e-newsletter if you're interested in knowing more about what's up in ASAP. We're going to have Dr. Bullwinkel and Swanson's information in the podcast link, and Jeff Rouse. And thanks again, Dr. Pittner, for having Katie become an
Send it to him.
orthodontist.
He'll love it.
Yeah. Thank you,
All right.
Stacey. Thank you, ASAP. We are proud and happy members. So
Well, thank you. We love you guys, and just are so proud to watch all the things you're doing. Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you again next time.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.